Hi, welcome to the Jon Gaunt podcast. Pretty serious one today. I want to talk about violent crime. And my question to you is this, and please get replying as soon as you can. Is violent crime out of control in the United Kingdom? And indeed, if you think it is out of control, how do we get back on top of it? Or is it just the same as ever? Am I overreacting? After that monster yesterday, Kyle Clifford refused to come and hear the witness statements of the family who he slaughtered. I'd have dragged him up by his fingernails. He's paralyzed. He's in a wheelchair because he shot himself with a crossbow after raping his ex-girlfriend, murdering her mother, and indeed her sister when she came home. They describe him as a monster today, and that is what he is. My question is, though, how do we get on top of that? And that is one violent crime. But then I could point you to Southport and what happened there, and those other Islamist terror atrocities we've had recently. Knife crime in London, Birmingham, Manchester, any major city, fueled by the drugs war. But I ask the question, is it any worse? Because I'm quite willing to be wrong on this. It feels to me as if it's completely out of control. I think we've got soft sentencing. I think we've got soft coppers, not the front line. They're doing the best they can, but they're being organised and arranged and directed by the common purpose or Rainbow Lace Brigade, aren't they? It's time, surely, to get tough on crime. And then what about us parents? What responsibility do we bring to the table? Are we teaching our kids in the correct way? Are we bringing them up to respect other people? Do we believe in law and order? But then we've had a government like Boris Johnson's government, which was just on the take. Where's the examples to look up to? Look at the terrible stories in the health service where some doctors can't be trusted anymore. They've lied or they've assaulted patients. Have we lost all idea or sense of what's right and wrong? I'd love your views on this today, please. And I am going to ask the ultimate question, which nobody else ever asks because they're petrified of it. Is it time to bring back the death penalty? Don't get me wrong. I don't think the death penalty would deter anyone, but at least it gets rid of the scum like that guy yesterday, and indeed people like the Southport killer. Jon Gaunt, the father of these two girls who got murdered by this monster, he told the court yesterday he wanted to deliver his words eye to eye with Clifford. But Clifford refused to come to the sentencing. That's your first question. Should a prisoner ever be allowed to do that? Alex Rudakubana said the same. He wouldn't come and listen to what he had done and what his sentence is. He went down for 52, 54 years. He'll never come out. Clifford will never come out. Got 3 life sentences. But is that enough? That's what I ask you. I don't see the point of keeping them alive. I would execute them. What's your opinion? I don't want to just make this about the death penalty, though. I want us to question how the hell have we got to this situation? Mr. Hunt was given his victim's impact statement. He said, Kyle, just remember one thing. This is the man who killed his wife and 2 beautiful girls. And I thought long and hard about putting the pictures of them up as my banner today for this broadcast. But in the end, I decided I had to, because they could be anybody's daughters, anybody's wife. And it's only when you see it that you think just how horrendous what this man is and what he did. Of course he's a misogynist. Of course he's foul. He couldn't put up with the fact that he had been rejected. So this is what Jon Gaunt said yesterday. Kyle, just remember one thing. Whatever sentence you are about to receive, whatever misery lies ahead for you, remember, on your dying day, there will be no release for you, Kyle. So maybe in a way, he's saying the life sentence is better. And then he said, the screams of hell, Kyle, I can hear them now. They're going to roll out the red carpet for you. It says here on this report, he was visibly emotional. When I heard this yesterday, I was in bits by it. He's talking like any dad, any father, isn't he? He described the killer as callous, cowardly, and vindictive. Then his daughter, the one who survived, Amy, told Clifford he'd earned a place in hell, describing him as a monster, and that what he did to my baby sister is nothing short of demonic. Of course, the court was silent as Jon and his daughter spoke, broken only by the sounds of sobbing of other family members and police officers. Police officers. It's just horrendous, isn't it? Just absolutely horrendous. Your views, please. Why is this happening? Why is it happening in the United Kingdom? Is law and order and is violent crime completely out of order? Mike Pepper says it is, but they won't speak about it. So therefore it doesn't exist. Well, it's not just up to the politicians, Mike, is it? It's up to me and you and everybody. Anybody who's watching this broadcast, whether you're watching it live with me now this afternoon, or whether you're watching it on catch up later, whether you're listening to it on one of my audio podcasts, it doesn't really matter. We've got to make our voices heard. You don't have to agree with me. I think the death penalty is the right sentence. Although what Jon Hunt said yesterday does make me stop and think that every day he wakes up, Clifford will remember what he did, how he took away that. But he gave those two girls and their mum a life sentence. He killed them. He stopped their life and probably stopped Jon Hunt's life as well. He's a BBC radio commentator, as you probably know. I just think it's horrendous. I think all of this has gone too far. And I go back to what I said weeks and weeks ago about the broken window philosophy. That's where it starts. There's no discipline in the home. There's no respect. And then, of course, we've got to talk about the feckless fathers. So many families being brought up without a male role model. And then the men who are around, we've kind of been emasculated. We all know what a woman's role is, which is anything. We had International Women's Day the other day. Don't get me wrong, I agree with it. I've got two daughters myself. But what's man's place or the men's place? And why aren't men standing up to this brutality? It's horrendous. And I'm going to go on and talk about the other crime as well. I'm going to come to your comments in a moment. Keep them coming in, please. Let's just build a little bit of momentum so we can have a real debate. How do you think we get on top of violent crime? Do you agree with me? It's out of order in the country at the moment. Do you feel unsafe? Not just ladies now, not just women, men. Do you feel unsafe on the streets at night? I'm off to see my daughter tonight in lovely Leamington Spa. But I still thought seriously, well, how do I get back to the train station? Which roads am I going to walk down? Even me, big, fat, ugly old tosspot me. You shouldn't be thinking like that, should you? I'm not saying we want to go back to a time when there was no crime, because I don't think there ever was. But the violent crime we've got now, we've got to stop. And let me tell you, the guy, Mike Pepper, who said, well, the politicians don't recognize it. Well, we get the politicians we deserve, and we've got to start demanding that they take this seriously. I don't want to live in this country like this. Do you? Love to get your opinions. Let me just talk to you as well about the other incidents that I wanted to bring up today. Is it out of control in the UK? The life sentence, 3 life sentences Kyle Clifford got yesterday for brutally raping and murdering his ex-girlfriend, murdering her sister and her mother with a crossbow. Don't forget that. But also then let's talk about gang warfare. I mean, under Citizen Khan, it looks like London is stab city. And what are we going to do? Oh, we'll have a knife amnesty. Well, we've had loads of them, and it still carries on. It's got to surely be carry a knife, you're going to get life. If you carry a knife, you're going down for 10 years. No parole, No messing about, straight away. I would make the prison sentences for knife and gun crime to be really hard. They should be, to use the cliche from The Clash, breaking rocks in the hot sun. Do you agree with me? We've also got to concentrate on the drug trade. And how do we get on top of that? And these, what do they call them? Cross-country lines. And then, of course, the murder of those 3 young girls in Southport by Alex Rudakubana, an Islamist murderer, even though they wouldn't tell us that at the time. I still say there wouldn't have been riots or riots on the scales that there were if our Prime Minister, our supreme leader, had been honest and told us who they thought the suspect was. They knew, they had him inside, they had him. Why didn't they tell us? Because they don't trust us. Now, Rudakubana did get, and at least he didn't put the families through a trial in the end, he did get 53, 54, I can't remember how long it is, 50 odd years in prison. He'll never come out. But should we now have the death penalty? And indeed, let's go back a bit earlier than that. Do we need to change the whole way we police? Do we need to give the police more powers? Interesting point from Thorne Moore. He says the prisons are full. Well, the solution to that is not to do what Starmer's done, and indeed what the Conservatives were going to do, and let people out early. The solution is you build more. I thought Starmer was all for building. Let's build more. And let's decide what kinds of criminals are going to be locked up. The last lot they released, amongst them were sexual offenders. They shouldn't be getting released early. I also don't believe in this nonsense. Somebody gets 10 years, and if they're well behaved, then they do 5. No, the incentive should be get 10, behave yourself, you'll be out in 10. Misbehave, you're going to get some extra time. Slapping a bird's bottom says there are many things that are out of control in the UK right now, including our government. Yeah, but I agree. But we've got to, they're drunk on power, aren't they? But we've got to say this problem was there before Starmer arrived on the scene. It didn't seem to me that the Tories had an idea how to handle it. And indeed, in London, with the stabbings and the gang warfare, no one seems to be getting on top of that. We've got police officers running a police service, acting like social service social workers, or like the trendy vicar. I don't want the trendy curate running the Met. I want a hard bastard, somebody who's going to really stamp down on it. The last one we had like that was the guy they called the Major. What was his name? You know the one I'm talking about. The Met Commissioner with the bald head. His name's gone for a minute. It'll come back. But that's what we need. Or we need a Bill Bratton kind of guy in from the USA. And we do have to face, and I've been saying this on the radio for the last 15 or 20 years, we need to build more prisons. Why have they got such a problem? I know some of our prison state is old-fashioned, in a terrible state, and not right to put people in. I know that. Build new ones. Don't go, oh, well, because they're terrible, like the Scrubs or somewhere, or Pentonville, we won't build any more prisons. That's not the right approach. We need to build the prisons, but we need also within our schooling system to put proper discipline back in there so that kids know their place. If you're hard on kids when they're young, I'm not talking about beating, because I know the big smacking debates come up again, and I don't believe in smacking children anymore. I used to, and I've done it a couple of times, but I wouldn't do it now because it's almost an admittance of failure. We need to find other ways to cope. However, kids do need discipline. They need parameters, and they need to be told, if you do that, I'm going to be showing you the consequences of your action. You know, some parents do that thing where they count to 10. Well, if you count to 10 and the kid's still being a yobbo, you then have to do whatever the threat was, don't you? Otherwise, they'll just take the P1SS out of you constantly. Death penalty will never happen, John, because there are too many bleeding hearts in this country. Well, do you think there's more bleeding hearts than the decent silent majority, because I don't. We've got to make our voice heard. I know that's going to be a bit more difficult at the moment because reform have gone into meltdown. I can't believe what's happening there. Did a whole podcast about it yesterday. If you've not listened to that or watched it, do, because it's getting great numbers. But I can't believe what Nigel Farage is doing. Shot himself not just in one foot, but in both. And now he's making it worse. Why on earth can't they just talk to each other, him and that Rupert Lowe? The best chance we've had for ages to get a more slightly right-wing government, and they are fighting like cats in a sack. They make me sick. And as I said in yesterday's podcast, it makes me wonder, well, maybe they're not any different to the rest of the politicians. They just want power. And when they get power, they're just going to be the same self-serving pigs with their snouts in the trough. I'd love to get your views on that today as well. If you're liking what I'm talking about, or it's interesting you, please press the like button. Even if you're watching on replay, if you're listening on a podcast on Apple or wherever you get them from, please press the button. And if you think I'm right, and that's all you want to say, Gaunty, you're right, I'm with you, say it as well, because we've got to start building a momentum. You do not have to agree with everything I'm saying. You might be against the death penalty. And as I say, John Hunt's words there are certainly making me think. But I can't see the point of keeping Alex Rudakubana and indeed this Kyle Clifford alive, that we're paying for them. I can't see it. The police are more interested in doing the Macarena than solving and preventing crime. I know you're joking, but there is an element to that, isn't it? That they're being misdirected. That's what I said at the beginning, that they're being misdirected by the politically correct woke fools who somehow are in charge of the police. So they want to police hurty words. They want to tell people off them. They're even investigating whether, what's his name? The guy from Reform, Rupert Lowe, whether he actually did verbally abuse the chairman. And now the chairman's been accused of being an abuser in terms of his verbal altercations with members of the staff. Get over yourselves. They're not police matters, are they? It's like people have been sent to prison, or people, journalists like Alison Pearson getting a knock on the door for something she wrote in a paper. I want you to protect us from violent criminals and sexual abusers. I don't want you to be policing us for what we might say is an honest held opinion on Facebook or X or Twitter or whatever it's called. How about getting on top of the rape gangs? I can't believe we've still got a position. It's 20 or 30 years since I first talked about this on the radio, and we've still got it happening in this country. And it isn't just historic ones, i.e. now more evidence has come to light, we're getting more people in court. It's still going on. And not just in the Muslim community. Obviously, that's where the focus is at the moment, largely. But it's going on in all communities to a lesser and greater extent. Why do we tolerate this? What's that song by the Manic Street Preachers? If you tolerate, I don't know if it's about this, but if you tolerate this, then your children will be next. What a terrible world we're living in. Clive Powell says, you are right on Facebook. Thank you, Clive. Dave Burton says, bring back the birch. I'm not sure whether that would work. I used to be a great believer in bringing back the cane in school, as I used to call it the ultimate deterrent. And I have had the cane, and I can use the cliche, it never did me any harm. But we should be able to, when the kids are kids, surely discipline them and control them in a different way. Isn't slapping them or caning them an admittance that we've lost control? There's a kid in my school called Greggy. He was also always outside Grimes, the headmaster's office, always getting the cane. It didn't really change his behavior. The way to change behavior is surely to work with these kids. And I'm not going soft on you, by the way. I'm not going soft. We do need to get on top of this. But let's go back to the whole root cause of this. It's a society that, I think Mrs. Thatcher said this, knows the price of everything but the value of nothing. I'm not sure if it's her or a Labour politician, but it's kind of true, isn't it? That's where we're living now. Can you get me? Right? Instead of a child saying, please may I have, it's can you get me? Everything is gettable. Everything is there. And if they can't get it legally, they'll steal it. Look at the way shoplifting is completely out of control. I don't even call that shoplifting what's happening now. It's looting, isn't it? Nicky Campbell, the DJ from Radio 5 Dead, he was talking about one in London the other day that a friend of his took a video of. These kids just walk into the shop and clear the shelves. I saw this when I was working in that posh supermarket. We were told not to challenge them because you might get stabbed. They might be a junkie. So it's a green light. And then they told me, and it then was in the papers as well, that the police don't even come round unless it's over 200 quid. They're not going to get sent to court. Well, I could kind of understand that with the pressures that we've got in the courts and in the police system. But don't forget, it was the Tories under Theresa May. Do you remember Officer Pleb? When they cut the police by 20,000 police officers. I was one of the people who said this is a mistake. We need more police, not less. And we need police who are obviously open-minded, fair, into equality, not racist and the rest of it. But we also need them to be hard. We don't need a police service full of people who at Christmas won't be available because they're doing the pantomime playing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That's not what we need. You need to respect, and I'm going to say it, be a little bit fearful of a law officer. That shouldn't excuse them being a racist or over-aggressive. But how many of these people now with their mobile phones, the coppers are trying to control the situation, they've all got their phones out and they're filming it. Even when they know their mate's in the wrong. This isn't right. And then they get to court and their evidence, video evidence, their citizen journalism is used as if it's real and fair and not biased. It's just garbage. The country has lost control, though, says Dave. Thornmore, apparently you're allowed to steal up to 200 quid before the police will come out. Yeah, that's right. That's what I've just said, mate. You're right. I tell you what's interesting. Anybody watching on Twitter, because I'm getting no comments from Twitter, loads from YouTube, loads from Facebook, but Twitter's not showing up. So if you are watching on Twitter, just say, I'm watching you on Twitter, Gaunty. I can see. It could well be the technology again, for which I apologize. So what I'm trying to say is, yesterday, it was an horrific crime. There have always been horrific crimes. Of course I have. I've been watching that documentary on Ruth Ellis. Have you seen it? It's a drama documentary. Very good. It's a series. So there's always been crimes like that. There was the craze back in the 50s and 60s. Jimmy McGovern up in Glasgow slashing people. He got rehabilitated, though. There has always been violent, horrid crime. Yeah, the Moors murderers, another example. But it just seems as if there's more. What do you think? And that we don't get on top of it. And that our police at the moment, and I'm not blaming the individual officers, I think from the top to the bottom, they've been infested by the woke, the common purpose, culturally aware, we mustn't do this, we mustn't do that. It's like, you know, when they won't take a police dog into certain houses if they're of a certain religion. Why not? That's two-tier policing. You don't like dogs? Tough. We've got police dogs in this country. That's what we do. Look at the Spanish police. I wouldn't dare answer back a Spanish copper. Would you? No. And I'm not saying we need to turn into paramilitary thugs. Although I would stress one thing. Why are our police now looking like RoboCop? But they actually act like robots. They don't act like a tough, hard RoboCop, do they? They don't smash a few eggs to make an omelette. They're literally scared. All tooled up. You haven't got the old uniform my dad had. I remember my dad when he was in the cops when I was a kid. He had a cape and he had a whistle, no radio, and he had a truncheon, which had got burnt when he arrested somebody. That's what he had. And now, as I say, they've all got their stab vests on. And I don't blame them. But crime's out of control. And certain crimes, they turn a blind eye to. Not the fault of the individual officers. I want tougher policing. I want tougher sentencing. And I want more prisons. And then when we have horrific crimes, like the one that I've described yesterday, and we have horrific crimes like, are we allowed to call him an Islamist yet? Rudakubana, yeah? He's certainly a terrorist, isn't he? Don't you want that dealt with more swiftly? Don't you want to be told who the suspect is? Aren't you fed up when they say, yes, a man was seen running away, 6'4", but they don't mention anything else? So then you naturally assume, maybe, just like the rioters, the wrong thing. That's no good. Describe them. If you were describing me, fat, scruffy, white bloke. Too fat, too old to be running. Right, that'd be me. Right? I won't take offence. If it's a black person, say it's a black person, 6'4", black skin, blah, blah, blah. Got dreadlocks or hasn't got dreadlocks. You understand where I'm coming from? It was somebody who looked like a Muslim in the sense of he was wearing traditional Muslim dress and he had a beard. Yeah? What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? Itohan Amos, I'm really glad that you got cured, mate, but I don't want you to be coming on here and putting your ridiculous comments up. We're not talking about you and your health. So go away. So I've got rid of them. There we are. All right, let's take some more comments. I keep forgetting to put you up on the screen. Here we are. What's this one? Police are asking for volunteers. Who in their right mind would volunteer to get stabbed up? I think you're right. Do we still have specials? See, that's what we used to have, and they were part of the community. But we need coppers. I was always against PCSOs. I can see a role for them now. But when they were chopping the coppers down during the PC pleb thing, they were trying to replace them with what the proper coppers called hobby bobbies. Yeah, people who weren't proper, didn't have the office of constable, so they couldn't actually arrest anyone. There's no point in that, is there? During the Queen's funeral, you can see a massive difference in smartness, discipline, and pride in the military than the police. I didn't spot that myself, Chopper, but thank you for your comments. John Hugh Edwards, 1 year wait for trial, then walks away scot-free. Hurty words, you're banged up within a week, and 2 years sentence. It's crazy. We need to combine army and the police temporarily, crack down on looting, etc. I think I would agree with that. I think there is a place now for the army to be in city centres. I do. Not because the police have lost control, but because there's just so many people, and literally people think now they can just walk in and take whatever they want. It's, don't get me wrong. If a woman is coming in and stealing baby food for her baby and she's skinned, I said this when I worked in the posh supermarket, I'd probably help her. What I meant was I'd certainly turn a blind eye. But if it's a load of kids drugged up to the eyeballs and they're going to sell it down the pub later, I wouldn't. But then would I put myself in danger? And that's the other thing. We're all scared to do that, aren't we? Where are the heroes now? Peter Stewart, you literally get away with murder now. Well, it does look like that, Peter. You're right. And it's also because we don't seem to know what's right and what's wrong as a society. You know that thing I just alluded to, the can you get me? Yeah. No one says please, please, and thank you anymore. No one makes a request. No one asks a question. We all jump to conclusions. We see the copper and we automatically think he's bent. Yeah, he's a racist. Yeah, he's corrupt. When most police officers are doing it as a sense of duty. I'm not saying there aren't bad apples. Of course there are. But it does worry me that we've had this complete breakdown. Like what you're saying about doctors, nurses. Like, I don't really like the way people have a go at the nurses and doctors who did the dance routines to TikTok during the during the COVID crisis. If you were there every day watching people die, are you not allowed to have a laugh? Are you not allowed to somehow give yourself a bit of gallows humor or, just relax for a minute? Well, I think you should be. So I think, again, that's the wrong target. And no matter where you stand on COVID and the vaccinations and the rest of it, now is the time to move forward, isn't it? And to naturally assume everybody in the health service is a killer and let's have sentences. That's what some people are saying. It's just ludicrous. Ludicrous. We've got to get a sense of proportion. You might say, well, a lot of these violent crimes, I mean, I see they've tried to put the violent crime of Kyle Clifford yesterday. They said he'd been watching Andrew Tate's videos. I've never watched any of them. I mean, I think the guy's a Burke. Why does he speak with that ridiculous accent? He comes from Luton. I've worked in Luton. I didn't end up speaking like that, right? I don't know about the rights or wrongs of him, but I don't think with that influence. He says some pretty horrible things about women from what I gather and the little bits I have read about him. But pinning it on him is a bit like when they try to pin, well, it all goes back to Clockwork Orange. They tried to pin riots on that brilliant movie. It's all a bit daft. It's all a bit one-directional. It's a bit Route One football, isn't it? Mind you, after watching Coventry City last night, that's what we need to start playing. What a dreadful performance. What do we have? 9 wins on the bounce. And then last night we played Derby and we were useless. I've got to say hello at this point to Ben the Ram. Every time they beat us, he gives me a $5 for my coffee. He sends me a coffee, but just to rub my nose in it. Thank you, Ben. If you do want to support the podcast, the way to do it is to buy me a coffee. Simple enough. You just go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt, and then you can donate a $5. Lots of people donate 15 quid at the first time, but it's up to you. And that all helps to make the podcast come on. Have you seen my new shirt today? I think it looks quite nice. Going back to you, Edwards, for a moment, Regan and Carter. Yeah, did you see him? He's now living in his mum's old cottage. Where's the punishment been for him? And he's now used as an example in case law. Other paedophiles are saying, well, Hugh Edwards didn't get set down for looking at these photos. Why am I being? It's absolutely mad. That guy should have gone to prison. And I don't care if Hugh Edwards' sentence was tougher than some bloke we've never heard of. I don't give an SH1T. Use them as an example. See what I'm trying to say? It's just nonsense. And it's just nonsense for people to think they can walk into a shop and clear the shelves. And then the final bit of this jigsaw of what we've got, I alluded to it a few days ago. The amount of people we're letting into the country, or they're getting into the country, we're not vetting them, and they've got different, how shall we put it, cultural standards. Some of them, not all of them, some of them seem to settle an argument or a disagreement with a machete rather than negotiation. That's no good. We need to clamp down on that. We must also need to know who is in the country. I still haven't had a satisfactory answer to that bloke who wanted to kill all Jews on social media, but got in on a rubber dinghy a couple of days ago. Has he been sent back yet? Is he now in prison in the country that he came from? What is going on? And when we've got people preaching hatred, why aren't they thrown out before their sandals can touch the ground again? Penny Lancaster is a special. She is. You're right, Peter. She is. That's Rod Stewart's missus, isn't it? I'm sure she's an individual woman in her own right. And so, finish. I'm going to finish now. Because this subject could easily get me into trouble. I could easily say something I don't particularly want to say. But what I will say is this. I believe violent crime, knife crime, etc., is completely out of control. Our sentencing isn't tough enough. We're not strong enough with our children. We don't know where they are. There's too many feckless fathers. We all love to blame single mums, but I think we should be looking at the fathers as well. Where's the role models? Why haven't we got more facilities for kids to divert them from crime? How about a few more jobs for them? Because if you give kids a challenge, it's always that. When I was in school in Coventry, we went to a place called Dolly Mock. And I tell you what, it was out in Wales, and it was the great equalizer. Because you'd have the bully of the school, and he's on the end of a rope, and he's abseiling, and he needs what he would call the two wimps who are holding the other side of the rope to help him get down. It builds teamwork. It builds togetherness, just like competitive sport does that. Team sports, that's what it's all about, isn't it? You're only as strong as your weakest link, etc., etc. We need more of that within our society. But when somebody does something wrong, they must be punished. Yes, they should be rehabilitated. It's totally wrong that we send people to prison and they come out and they're still addicted to Class A drugs, or they still can't read or write. I wouldn't let anyone out of prison, no matter what they were put down for, until they could read and write, and indeed, they are off drugs. There are too many drugs in our prisons. I think we know why and how. That's got to be solved. There's that thing that I've seen something about, I think it was Manchester, where they're using drones to drop drugs and knives and guns into prison. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm a bit thick or a bit naive. I can't think it's that difficult. You know where the bloody prison is, yeah? You know what a drone does, it flies. You know if it's at night time, then you just position a couple of marksmen and shoot a few down. You'd only have to shoot a few down and that would be the end of it. I find all of this ludicrous. It's like we've lost control. Our lawmakers, the politicians haven't got a clue. The law enforcers, well, they don't want to enforce anything. Oh, no. They're too concerned about the human rights of the scum rather than our human rights. It should surely be our human right for me tonight to walk back in the pitch black. Or if you know where Leamington Station is, you know what I'm saying. You can cut through the back of it. I should be able to walk through there without any fear. And certainly, if I'm a little bit fearful, what are women like who are on their own, getting off the train as they come back from London or Birmingham? This is wrong. We should not be living in fear, because we should be punishing harshly the people who are committing the crimes. And we should be creating a society where people know it's about contributing, not just taking. That thing I said about the get, can you get me, right? That's all part of this same thing. Everybody knows their bloody rights. Not enough people know their responsibilities. That's what we've lost. And I'm not blaming this Labour government or the Conservatives. They're all involved in this. This political chitter-chatter, BBC. Oh, everyone's lovely. Well, everyone's not bloody lovely. There's some horrible scumbags out there. We need to have a different approach. Are you with me? And now, just before I go, I do want to finish by saying my thoughts are obviously with the family, Jon Hunt's family. It's just terrible. And those little girls in Southport. And I hope I haven't insulted anybody by using them as the example, but I felt I had to. Every father, every mother, every parent needs to know that could be your kids. Don't forget that Clifford. He lived with the family effectively. He'd been going out with her for a year or so. It's just horrendous, isn't it? It's just so beyond the pale. But it all starts with low-level crime. And him, he's got a scumbag brother who's in prison for a similar sort of offence. It's frightening. Really, really frightening. We've got to fight back. The decent, silent majority, and we've got to make our blooming politicians stand up and be counted. So my thoughts are with those families. Until tomorrow, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug, a real hug, and tell them that you love them. And I'll speak to you again tomorrow, hopefully. You've been watching the Jon Gaunt broadcast, or you've been listening on Catch Up, or watching on Catch Up. Thank you for supporting me. Keep doing so, and keep spreading the word. Keep telling people about the Jon Gaunt Show. Don't forget the YouTube channel as well. You can subscribe for that. 99p. It's as cheap as chips. See you later. Bye.